no show and tell. You can take the cell.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this series that still has no name, or TTLG, Take This L Gaming, which really means nothing, but it's what I'm rolling with until I figure this thing out, since I'm just kind of doing stuff to be doing stuff right now, just to fill in time, because I need something to do when not at work or wrestling. Work, by the way, is going really smooth. I work at a medical supply warehouse, which I said in the previous episode, but we're surprisingly not busy in the least, which is weird, despite everything that's going on. Not busy at all. In fact, I left early twice last week. I was like, hey, Nick, there's not much going on. Not saying you have to go. You can if you want to. Otherwise, I'd be just sitting there cleaning or doing some random maintenance stuff. But anyway, that's not the point of today's episode. Today's episode is about how I got started wrestling to begin with and why. Well, let's see. Got the, I guess, did you call it the bug? The itch? That sounds good. No, I got interested in the whole, all right, beginning. My backstory for wrestling isn't like really dramatic, like, well, not dramatic, but traditional as far as, I've been watching wrestling since I was 6 years old. I loved it. Nope, that wasn't me. Wasn't a lot of wrestling being watched at my house from what I remember. I think my wrestling experience, as far as watching, came from my grandparents, because my dad had one of those wonderful black cable boxes. And if you're old enough to remember that, I'm 28, so I do, but black cable boxes where essentially everything was free, and my grandparents really liked WWE. This was during Attitude Era time. This is like late 90s. So he would record all the pay-per-views for them and, bring the VHS to the house, which is usually when I'd get to watch them. But as far as ultimately, that's not what really piqued my interest in wrestling. What piqued my interest in wrestling was actually an anime of all things. It was called Ultimate Muscle, which was literally, it was professional wrestling if made over the top as humanly possible, and it was great. Like the main character's name was Kid Muscle, and most of the characters were like loosely based off of some real life person. I think of an example, but that's something like 15 years ago. Came on Fox Kids. But that's how I got kind of into wrestling. But as far as how I ended up like, I'm going to go get trained and start wrestling, that happened, was it 2015? It was like WrestleMania 31. It's the same card that Sting and Triple H wrestled. I think I could be lying. I know Seth Rollins cashed in his money. Seth Rollins, he lost to Randy? Yep, lost to Randy Orton. Came in, cashed in his money in the bank on Brock Lesnar. Yep, that's it. Okay, the WrestleManias kind of bleed together for me, so forgive me. I suck at that sometimes. But yeah, I was watching that, sitting there with my roommate at the time. I was just watching that in the back of my head. I was like, man, I could do that. Fast forward, maybe 9 months later, when I eventually made the life choice to actually start going to the gym. This would be March 13th, 2016. At this point, I still had not decided to wrestle. But then me and my roommate watched WrestleMania 32 that year, and somehow, some way, the way my brain put it together was, hey, you should give that a try. You've been working out for, about 4 weeks now. Like, you're capable of doing this. So from that point, I gave myself, I said I was going to give myself a year to get in shape to wrestle. If only I knew what I knew now. I gave myself a year to get in shape for wrestling. So that's March. 9 months later, not even a year, 9 months later, the fitness director for Gold's, I was talking to him about it. That's Chris Keith. He's the current owner of UEW, by the way. Mr. Christopher Keith was the fitness director at Gold's. I was talking to him, and he was like, why are you waiting a whole year? Like, it's already January. Just go ahead and sign up. I was like, you sure? Yeah, just go ahead and sign up. So it's like, okay. And conveniently, the school, GXW, was down the street about 5 minutes. So I was like, well, that's super convenient. As a matter of fact, Chris looked that up for me because I wouldn't say I'm not a self-starter. I would just say that I need to be held accountable sometimes. Otherwise, I'm just not going to do something. But he's like, it's down the street, just go ahead and go. So like, okay, I'm going to go. And I went, and I signed up, and that was cool. About 4 months in, however, that school got it kind of went under. Financial reasons, couldn't afford the rent, all that wonderful stuff. So we were actually, those of us who stuck around were taken in by a fellow named Robert Cropper, who owns CPW. It's classic pro wrestling out of, wouldn't say Richmond, it's Ladysmith, Virginia. I mean, they don't run shows in Ladysmith, but that's where he stays at. He took us in not too long after the independent wrestling ref at the time, Chris Sharp, who was actually now NXT UK ref, came in and took over and actually trained us for the following year. And thank God that happened, because if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be wrestling at all right now. I probably would have just stopped. So that was, I guess, a cosmic occurrence, because that was because if it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here. But not being the biggest wrestling fan as a kid growing up, aside from anime and pay-per-views I got to watch on occasion, since I had to pick up on it later on as far as influences, as far as who I watched pretty much in my adult life, I kind of started to gravitate towards Ricky Steamboat, because people kept talking about how WrestleMania 3 was like the greatest WrestleMania with him and it was Randy Savage, Ricky Steamboat, and then also had the Hogan Andre match. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and watch this match. And it really was great. Even the behind-the-scenes stuff where he's talking about Randy just like laying out the entire match A to Z on a yellow legal pad. All the way from the very first step where he wrote down lockup. And I was like, that's funny. I always thought that was kind of inherent, but whatever, as far as starting some matches go. Or if you really feel like getting really adventurous, just don't lock up at all. Just do something else. But anyway, I digress. Let's see. As far as why I keep wrestling, though, like why do I keep wrestling now? I like to think of myself as a creative person. I like to make things. Like I have a bass guitar. I'm not particularly great at it, to be honest. I played upright bass in orchestra for 7 years, and I was like okay at it. It wasn't something I was super passionate about, but I did enjoy it. I mean, I practiced and stuff. These days, though, I fiddle with the bass. I like to do some graphic design. I actually make the graphics for United Elite Wrestling. That's Chris Keefe's promotion once again. Shout out to him, UEW. I also make highlight reels. I also enjoy doing graphics for my other wrestling friends as far as promotional material, stuff like that. I just like creating things. And wrestling is like, well, most recently, after this past WrestleMania with no crowd, it was recognized as being more of a performance art than a sport, which personally I feel like that's what it's always been. It's never really been a sport. I mean, there's athletes in it, and they're athletic, and it takes a lot to do it, and not everybody can do it. But at the end of the day, as Mike Quackenbush once said, it is live-action combat theater. It is performance art. It's art. Like, no way to look at it. It's art. I mean, the only aspect of it that's competitive is behind-the-scene politics. But we won't talk about that, because I don't want to go into that. Well, that's pretty much covers how I started wrestling and why I still wrestle. Even who trained me, Chris Sharp. I mean, there's other people in there, like Stefan, also in NXT. I can't even say his name right now. Mr. Stefan Smith. Also one of my mentors. Even Dan the Progressive Liberal even made a couple appearances out there. A couple things learned from that guy. And Timmy Danger, believe it or not. His in-ring is questionable sometimes. Love you, Timmy. But, there's some good things chimed in. And I also got a shout to Mr. Neil Sharkey and my boy Eddie Diamond. Always an educational experience. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble as if this entire thing wasn't me just rambling for 10 minutes. Well, I'm going to sign off for now. And I don't know if I'm going to keep doing these going forward. I might. If anybody's actually interested in listening to me talk about nothing for the most part. But we'll see.